And you're looking at the Supreme Court building down in Washington, D.C., where the court this morning ruled, for the most part, against Arizona's tough anti-immigration law. They upheld one key part of it, but most of it was struck down. That is where we're starting today. Nothing on health care, but we did get a ruling on the immigration law. That's where we're starting today on the Markets Hub. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Vigna. We're going to the Supreme Court building in D.C. Jess Bravin is at the courthouse, and he has the story on the immigration law. Jess, can you give us the details of this one now and tell us exactly what the court did say?
Sure. This is a significant victory for the Obama administration in its argument that federal law preempts states from adopting their own independent immigration schemes. Basically, there were four provisions of an Arizona law known as SB 1070 that were intended to drive illegal immigrants from that state. And the three toughest provisions of that law that were challenged by the federal government were struck down by the Supreme Court for interfering with the federal immigration system. The fourth provision, which is actually the one that's gotten the most attention, it's the one that directs state police officers to check the immigration status of people that they stop, sort of the show me your papers provision. The court did not strike down that provision. It said that we need to see how it is actually implemented before we can tell whether it interferes with federal law or not. So that one remains on the books, but the other three provisions, which essentially made it a crime to be an illegal immigrant inside Arizona, were struck down.
Right. Now, obviously, this is going to play out largely in the Southwest, where immigration is the issue. But is this more of a political story right now, or is this more of an actual story about immigration? I mean, where do you see the bigger effect falling on this ruling?
Well, you know, it certainly what it does is that it returns the immigration issue to Washington. I mean, there have been efforts in a lot of these states, some in the Southwest like Arizona, but some quite far from the Southwest, such as Alabama and Pennsylvania, to impose their own independent penalties on illegal immigrants. And this decision today reinforces the federal role in setting immigration policy and says that state laws really cannot go beyond what the federal government has determined to be the proper policy for the country. And of course, as with all Supreme Court decisions, they spend a lot of time explaining why. I mean, these decisions don't just come out of the air. They have both for the majority opinion by Justice Kennedy and the dissenting opinions all have lots of support for their positions.
Right. Now, how much pressure is there going to be on the federal government? Because the Arizona law largely came about because the states were saying, look, you're not addressing immigration. What you're doing isn't effective. We're going to strike out on our own. And that's what they did. And the court, as we see this morning, struck that down. But the pressure is now going to fall back on the federal government to effectively deal with the issue of immigration, right? And how does that play with what President Obama did just last week?
Well, we know that the federal government has been stalemated over immigration for years and years. President George W. Bush attempted to come up with an immigration compromise, a bipartisan immigration compromise that fell apart mainly because of opposition from his own party. President Obama, when his party controlled the Congress, didn't get any kind of comprehensive immigration redo through. Right now, there seems to be a real deadlock between the Republican-controlled House and the president. The president has started acting unilaterally, as we've seen, to make a number of policy decisions within the discretion that he has. And the Supreme Court decision does mention that the executive has a lot of discretion over immigration policy because so much of it affects foreign relations and the status of Americans overseas and so forth. Right. So this decision really underscores that the buck stops in Washington with immigration policy, and if the voters want to see significant changes, they need to make that clear in the election.
Now, just to be clear, lastly, there was no ruling on health care today, right?
That's right. No ruling today on health care.
Okay, so there are 2 days, right? Wednesday or Thursday that it might come down. Is that it?
It could be. You know, the latest rumor is Wednesday, but we should hear shortly when the court will next sit, and that could tell us.
Okay. All right. Jess in D.C. at the Supreme Court building. Thank you very much.